Hey guys, alright, so I've already given the two lectures for the week, but I felt it was necessary to go through some of the kind of snowman examples that you guys might be going through as well. In the previous lecture, I went through all the different functions and kind of bumbled through how to get to a component and that kind of thing. But I'd like to kind of go through taking the example that we had, the snowman example, and making a bit of a game out of it where you can walk around and actually interact with the objects as we were kind of talking about in some of the previous lectures. So first off, let me remove some of these extraneous objects that I've had in here and then re-enable our first-person controller. So let's move this guy out into the middle of the scene and let's rotate him to face a little bit to start off here and to move back down. And I also wanted to add a couple of things that I've, as I've been ramping back up on Unity as well. It's pretty useful to use these keyboard shortcuts. So what's really nice is the QWERTY line right here in the top left of the keyboard can be used to navigate the different controls in the top left of the Unity editor. So for example, if I hit Q, that puts me into pan mode, where I can now pan my scene. W will now let me move me back into move, which is kind of the standard mode. So if I click, I can move things around. Then R, which is just kind of convenient, will let me now rotate objects, which I'll undo. And then T is is the scale tool, right? So now I can make things bigger or smaller or whatever. And then I'm not really sure what this tool does. Why? It's like a weird one, but it does something. It lets you kind of like expand things in these funky ways and then rotate. So I'm not sure. That one, I'm not entirely sure what the rectangle tool is used for. Another really effectively, a very useful tool is the number 2 on the top line. If you hit 2, it'll take you into 2D mode, and then 2 again will take you back into 3D mode. This is probably even more useful when you're doing 2D stuff in later lectures, but also it's really nice to be able to pan around and see things from a particular angle. And you can also switch, well, I guess it only lets you do on this particular angle. So it's kind of limited usefulness. And then obviously, you still have all the other controls that are still good. Cool. So what I wanted to do is to kind of talk a little bit about how we can let all of the, how could we walk around and then click on a snowman and have it explode. That'd be pretty fun. And so right now I've added our first-person controller back, and you'll notice that it's already back to normal. Well, oh, right, I have to enable our first-person controller, which is currently not enabled. So not sure what's going wrong. Let me just grab a new one. Great. And let's start. Oh, and it's using the wrong camera here. So let's disable this camera. For whatever reason, it's not taking over the camera. Great. So now I'm back to normal. Great. So first thing we need to do to make this work is we need to remove from the all of these our prefabs. Let's go and edit, open the prefab and edit and remove the rigid body, but we don't have it for this one actually. We have it for not Jim, but Bob, right? We were doing this earlier, or did I just do the exact same thing twice? I guess it's in Jim. So let's go and remove from the head the rigid body, the middle, remove body. And the bottom, remove the rigid body. Great. And now, hopefully, when we hit play, we'll be back to normal. Nothing will explode. But I want to, so that when I click on it, it will explode. So how do we do that? Well, what we need to do is we need to create a kind of explode or obliterate script. And it's actually quite easy to do. Let's go and add this component, add this script to Bob. Let's call it obliterate. Cool. And now let's double click on this. And notice, by the way, that we're in Bob, so every other Bob will have this script already there, which is pretty powerful. So let's double click on that script and it'll automatically open it up, which is great. We'll see our ball behavior script here, but it's not actually assigned to anything. And we're back to normal as we were before. And as you know, the Snowman has three components. We have our top, or head, let's call it that. Let's not do this public, right? This is private. Oops. Middle, and then private object bottom. Great. And let's also, let's call this a private count let's not do this quite yet. Oops. Great. And when we start, we're not going to deal with this counting thing. We'll eventually what we want to do is we want to add a almost like a manager that we'll deal with, like a manager that we can then count up from. And we don't really need to do anything in here quite yet. And nothing's really happening in update either. But what we want to do is when we click on the Snowman, we want to make it do something. We want to make it explode. We'll eventually get to that. But for the time being, let's start off with just making it disappear. So let's go and void on mouse down. So what is this? Right? We talked about we have input. We don't have on mouse down. We can't handle. We can do the mouse position. You can get the mouse button, but we can't handle the on mouse down event. And so you'll notice that every object has a certain set of event handlers. And to see a full list of them, let's go and go to the definition of this, which it will not let me do for whatever reason. Well, that's too bad. Let's go to mono behavior and hopefully we'll see some stuff here. Well, guess not. I'm not able to get to the mouse down. Either way, we have a bunch of different things we can see here, like on animation move, on application pause, on collision enter, on collision exit. Those are particularly useful on destroy, on disable, and so on. And so on mouse down is just another one of these functions where Unity tells us that, hey, the user clicked on us. So let's try this out. Debug log, clicked on Snowman, on Bob. Right, this is a Bob. Or on thing. Because we're just clicking on stuff. So let's see how that works. And it's only assigned to Bob. Notice that Bob, maybe we should edit Bob so we can know that is, what we're doing. And so let's double click on Bob. Let's go to the prefab open prefab asset, and let's give it a slightly, let's give its hat a funky color. Great. So now notice, well, that's not very helpful, is it? Maybe we want a new material that is going to be Bob's hat. And let's make it yellow. Cool. Oh, well, that will affect only that particular instance. We want to do it to the actual. Alright, now we'll go back, and now all of the Bobs are yellow hats. And so we can see here that when we're looking at a Bob, it's a yellow hat. Now the problem is, where's my mouse? My mouse is gone. So to get my mouse back, I can hit escape. Now I've got my mouse back, and if I click on Bob, nothing. Terrific. Alright. Why is that? Because our obliterate script is not working. Alright. This is fun. Let's get rid of the private, although it doesn't make any difference. Obliterate. Behavior. Perhaps that's why. We do not want to maximize. Let's see here. Let's do this to Jim. Right, I'm gonna pause this for a moment while I figure this out, because I don't need you guys. You guys don't need to see me embarrass myself. Okay, and we're back. So there's a bit of a gotcha here that I think is important to bring up. And let's bring up our code really quickly. So let's open up our obliterate script here. And you'll notice that on mouse down we expect click a thing to show up when we click a thing. Right? This is a Bob Snowman. So let's open that prefab asset, and you'll notice that when I run this, any Bob, which is one with a yellow hat, should react and show us a little debug output there. So if I hit escape and I click on that guy, nothing happens. Why did nothing happen? Well, this is an important thing to kind of bring up. Notice that there are these colliders here that you can see, and you can turn off colliders and all this stuff down here, by the way, just so you know. But we're going to do that. When I click on this, you see the colliders here. And this kind of digs into how Unity works, where the top level object will receive the events from the underlying ones. But unfortunately, the top level object, being Bob, does not have any object that would, any component that would receive that event. So for example, and this is not what we want to do, but if I added a rigid body to Bob, you'll notice, first of all the Bobs will like fall over. Well, some of them will, some of them won't, I guess. Should. Okay, that was strange. Let's remove this component, let's remove this component. Let's go back to our scenes. And here, let's select our prefab asset. And then let's add a rigid body component. And now you should see that they all fall over. No. What is going on? Welcome to my life. It's a good life though, really not much to complain about, if I'm being honest. Unclear why this isn't working. Let's put this guy up here, it should fall. Okay, not sure why it didn't update before, but now they're all updating correctly. So when you add a rigid body, it for whatever reason it didn't refresh. I guess sometimes you can do you can just refresh everything with Control R, but or rebuild. You can do that. Whatever. There's a way to rebuild. I believe it's Control R, at least here. But either way, great. So now, if I go back to Bob and I open up that asset, and now it's got a rigid body, great. And I'm going to add that obliterate thing. And when we play it, now you'll notice they'll all fall over, which is fine. But when I click on them, at least now I'm getting that log. So I click on that one. Click on this one. So the issue here is that the underlying colliders, and you'll notice too, like if I remove this, if I remove the rigid body, and now I play, obviously they won't fall over, but they also won't click. So what's the issue? Well, say I opened up, I clicked on the head, or really I need to click on an object with a specific collider. Right? The head is a sphere, and if I add that obliterate script to the sphere, now when I click on the head of the snowman, you'll see that happen again, right? The issue is though, if I hit on the hat, you don't see that message pop up. So how do we handle that, right? How do we handle the situation where it'll only work with a given collider? If it doesn't have a collider, then it will not actually hit that. So this script is useless. So we don't want a rigid body, because if we add a rigid body, all of our snowmen are going to fall on their face. Well, we can add a collider. We have a bunch of different options. We can have a capsule. We can have a box. Now, this is something that is a little bit of a bummer in that if you want to have more complicated composite type of collisions, you can't just do it off, straight off the bat. You kind of have to create scripts and things for Unity to kind of like do that do that sort of nested operation. But for this for the purposes of this, let's choose a capsule collider. Now you'll notice it kind of shows up. It's not really that helpful. I can't see it. So let's click on this Edit Collider button. You can't quite see this here very well, but it's in there. Whoops, that's not what we wanted to do. We want to edit the collider. And so let's, first of all, go back to orthonormal and go to the side view. And now we can click on that. You can barely see this because of the color of the snowman, but there are these controls here that let me really manipulate the position of the capsule collider. Oops. Let's go back and edit the collider. You can also do this manually, right? You can sort of do this by hand. We can put this at 0 and 0. That's what we'd expect. And we also put this at 0. That's not really correct. So we want to maybe put it at 2.5 or maybe 1. And then the height is, the radius is a little bit more like 1.5, it looks like. Maybe 2. And then the height is 5 or 4. 5 is good, and we can add a little bit to the height there. You know, it's not perfect. It's sort of, again, like it's gonna get us what we need. But it encapsulates this, the snowman relatively well. So now when we exit, you'll notice that this guy now has that collider. And when we hit play, if I click on the yellow snowman, it'll give me that event. The thing is, though, it'll also give me the event here. You'll notice I'm not actually clicking on the snowman right there. But for the purposes of us, if it's a game, right, like we don't really want them to be super accurate, so it's okay. So now let's go back into that script and make it do something a little bit more interesting. Say we want to make it disappear. And so what we can do is we can go in and destroy the game object. But the game object hasn't been defined yet, right? So how do we, well, before we do game object, we should do this being ourselves. And let's see if this works. So I hit play. And now, when I click on a snowman, well, it clicked, but it didn't destroy it. Right? Well, how do we get our own component? So we want to get our now the issue with the this keyword is that this is actually a reference to this particular script. So we want to access the game object. The game object, as you can see in the documentation here, the game object is this component is attached to. The component is always attached to the game object. So this is actually defined for us in the script already. Wish we knew that a second ago. Cancel. Save. So now, instead of this, we have the game object. And if we hit escape and we click on a snowman, it should get destroyed. So anyone with a yellow hat is up for grabs. Now you'll notice I was able to click through the arm of that other snowman. That's because it doesn't have a collider yet. And so that's now what we're going to have to do is add a collider to the other ones. Let's see if I can copy component and maybe I can paste it. How do I paste a component? Capsule collider, paste component as new. Now we have 2. So let's get rid of this one. Remove component. You might want to edit it and make sure that it actually makes some sense. Seems alright. And then we also need to add this to Monica, who does not have this one. And let's go check out Monica here. Looks alright. Looks correct. For the most part, somehow. And now we also need to add that obliterate script, and also to Jim. We want to add that to Jim. We want to add that obliterate script. And now, in theory, we can walk around obliterating all of them. But that doesn't happen yet. Why not? So I'm not able to delete these ones. And why is that? These are, let's try to remember. This is this one right here. Let's go back to the scene and see which one am I looking at this moment. Looks like it's this one. So, what's the deal with this guy? And this is a gym, but the gym hasn't been updated. So, looks like it's got its capsule. Looks like the script is set up. So what's the deal? Well, let's save, refresh, and run again. Just be another one of those flubs. Yep, there we go. So again, be very wary when Unity kind of doesn't work quite well and all that. So, great. Now, let's do something a little bit more interesting. Let's do it such that it'll obliterate it by blowing up the snowman like we were talking about. So instead of, let's get rid of this thing, and on mouse down, we want it not to destroy the objects, but we want them to blow up. And so what we want to do is we want to give the head a rigid body, and the way we do that is basically by using head.addComponent rigid body. It's that simple. We're going to do that for the middle and bottom as well. We're going to do some, and that's about it really. We also want to probably destroy the collider of this snowman, because once we've done it, we don't want to be able to do it ever again. And so we destroy this .get component collider, which will give us the collider of the particular component that we're in. So let's see. Will this give us any errors? No. And now this script is attached to all of these snowmen. And so if I go in and I hit play, as long as it's implemented everything, now if I hit escape and I click on this guy, it'll add, nope, no it won't. Why? Object reference not set to an instance of an object. So what we didn't do is we didn't actually attach head, middle, and bottom to anything. These are just empty objects at the moment. So there's a couple of different ways we could, create the public way, or what we can do is we can try to get the head, middle, and bottom by name. And so what we can try, let's try to do this, is head is equal to game objects get component in children we don't like that. I'll remember here we were trying to do this to find the object. So what we can do is this gets, well, we have the game object, so we can go game objects I'm going to pause here while I figure this one out. Sorry. Okay. And we're back. So the way we want to do this is actually a little bit surprising. Oh, also I should increase my zoom. I've gotten this feedback from somebody already. Cool. Hopefully you guys can see that a little bit better. So you can do the public approach where you effectively drag and drop, but that's going to be really hard. We've got like 10 of these instances. And so what we can do is we can assign head to be found this way. And you have a game object, that's the object that this script is attached to, and then what's called the transform, which we'll talk about more in the future. But the transform then allows you to then find children, and you can do that by way of providing it with a name. Unfortunately, the find function is not going to give you back the game object, it's going to give you back a transform as well. So the way you get the game object out of that is just like this. And now you can do this for the middle. You can do the exact same thing. And the bottom. And let's just make sure that that's going to work, because Jim has a head, middle, and bottom. Bob has a head, middle, and bottom. And also Monica has a head, middle, and bottom. So this should work. Let's give it a shot. And so now we hit play. There's no issues, no errors, great. And now when we click on one of the snowmen, it kind of explodes. Notice that the middle doesn't quite do anything, which is kind of funny. Let's see if the other ones work. No, they all have the same behavior, which is funny. But you'll see it's already, we're getting closer at least. Let's see. Right. You'll notice that the head gets on top of that collider. So, a couple of things we need to do. First of all, maybe we want to destroy the collider first. Great. And what's clear is that the middle is not being found. Right? And here's the error. And here's my cut and paste error. I thought I was being so clever. I'm signing middle and middle twice. So really, what needs to happen here is bottom. And now, without further ado, I can blow up a bunch of snowmen. Cool. 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 It's like a fun game, I guess. So if the point of this game is to find snowmen and blow them up, we're pretty far along. I guess I missed a couple. Neat. So, what else can we do with this? Well, how about we get some kind of manager to kind of keep track of how many snowmen we're blowing up. And so this is kind of an interesting one, because it's going to allow us to connect a bunch of different objects to each other. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a, first of all, we're going to go into our obliterate script, and each time somebody clicks on this, we're going to increase a counter. But it doesn't exist yet. So what we need to do is we need to kind of create like an external manager, public manager, public game objects manager, and then there'll be some kind of script that we'll also create. Cool. And then here we can, every time somebody clicks and blows up a thing, we can do this, counting script dot, we'll call it the snowman counter, plus. And this is all going to give us errors for the time being, because we don't actually have a script called count, we don't have a manager that does anything. And so let's go out and create a new an empty game object called the snowman manager. And in here, let's create a new script called count. And now we've got count, and we've got obliterate. And if we open up count, then we can start to kind of fill out what this is supposed to do. And all we really need to do is, first of all, we need to define a public integer, which is the snowman counter, like we had before, and it's going to be equal to 0 initially. And great, that should be all for now. We're going to add some display here in a minute. So let's make sure everything else is working before we do that. So let's go to the ball behavior. No, we don't do this. To obliterate. And quickly notice count is here. So just by the ability of adding that new thing, if we go there, it'll take us to our count that we created. Now the issue is the public game object manager isn't connected to anything, right? So that's a problem. Without trying to deal with like a struggle through connecting it programmatically, I'll show you in Bob, for example, when we look at the obliterate script, the manager is none. So if we go to open the prefab asset, let's just take in the inspector. I guess that won't really work. So what we need to do is not open it, but we need to select the prefab asset. And now we'll take that snowman manager and just bring it over here. Okay, I guess this does not work, so I have to do it for each one. That kind of sucks. Can we mass do it? Looks like it. Nice. So at least we can do it for a bunch. In fact, you can choose even Monica, and then you can do that, and it'll apply it to all of them, which is a really nice little feature so that you don't have to do it a million times. And now in the snowman manager, in the manager, you'll see this count value here in the 0. So when we hit play, if we did everything correctly, that number should go up every time we click on a snowman. Apparently not. Why not? Object reference not set to an instance of an object. On mouse down at line 37. So let's see what's wrong with our line 37. The counting script is not set to anything. Well, I guess that's a problem, isn't it? I think we need to set the script to something at least. And so to do that, what we do is the manager is going to already be set publicly, but then our counting script is going to be set to the manager get component count, just like we did before. In fact, we can set the manager programmatically here, but we've already done that. But let's just do it anyways. The manager is going to be able to be equal to game object find, and what do we call this thing again? The snowman manager. Great. So you can kind of double down, but either way. Now this won't be null, and this should hopefully increment that counter for us. So now if I click on this, we should hopefully see that count go up. And so now it's 1, it's 2, it's 3, it's 4. Awesome. So now that we know that that's working, let's add a little bit of UI so that we know, without having to look at this, interface, a little bit better of what is going on. So going back to the count script, let's create a onGUI, as we were talking about in the lecture. And now we're going to set the GUI color to be black, and we're going to set the GUI skin, the font size to be equal to 20, and then we're going to draw a GUI box in a new rectangle, 10, 10, 150, 50, and we're going to say obliterated the counter. Great. So what we're just doing is we're setting up the color of the GUI to black. We're setting the font size to 20. We're creating a box with an with a count. And let's see what that looks like. So now we've got a little box there. And you can kind of see on GUI it sets that up. And when I run around, I can go and I can click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. You can see the obliterated count is 7. So this kind of ties it all together, and now you can kind of see how to apply a lot of those ideas in the lectures to actually using this stuff in Unity. Hopefully that's been helpful. I figured after the end of that lesson it seemed a bit incomplete, so I wanted to kind of go through this much as the other classes are going to be doing this type of stuff in class. So hopefully that's helpful and sets you up well for kind of this first really hands-on exercise. All right, see you guys next time.